Welcome, foolish mortals. It's that time of year again. Spooky, scary times. Assuming you're watching this in October, that is. And what better way to get into the Halloween spirit than to learn about some creepy things in history, so here's some creepy things in history. As a warning, there's going to be some disturbing content, so don't blame me if you or your 2-month-old withering fetus of a daughter get spooked by this. Enjoy! The invention of photography has revolutionized the way that we remember key moments in our lives. The innocence of childhood, a first love, a favorite pet. But how about our dearly departed? Post-mortem photography started gaining popularity in the late 1800s as a way to memorialize those who recently kicked the bucket. The practice was sought after as a cheap alternative to commissioning a mourning portrait, which served the same purpose. Typically, the stiff subject would be positioned in the last sleep pose, which just looks like you caught them dozing off during a football game. More ambitious people tended to take the let's pretend they're still alive route and would pose with their late family members. Take a guess which one here is no longer amongst the living. Time's up. How'd you do? The correct answer is none of them. Did you really think that I'd show an image of a dead person in this economy? You disgust me. Nowadays, the market for post-mortem photography has flatlined, but I imagine that some influencers today would want to monetize themselves even as they escape this mortal coil. We all know that death is inevitable, and some of us, not me, try to find ways to benefit their fellow man. What if you donated your body to the well-being of others after your time on Earth ran out? In modern times, your organs could live on in a needy patient. In ancient times, your organs could become a yummy treat. Records from ancient Chinese and Middle Eastern times discuss the concept of a mellified man. This was the process in which a willing person would have their remains preserved in honey for medicinal consumption. It was discovered that natural, unprocessed honey served as a rather effective and tasty embalming agent. Thanks to honey's natural antibacterial properties, it was able to preserve bodies far longer than other resources at the time. To begin the mellification process, an altruistic elder would volunteer to completely restrict themselves to a classic Winnie the Pooh diet. Nothing but honey. Breakfast? Honey. Lunch? Honey. Dinner? Honey. Dessert? A lovely, decadent creme brulee. Nope, more honey. As you can imagine, all of that honey ain't so sweet for the good old digestive tract. Eventually, the volunteer's body just completely deteriorates, slowly becoming honey to the point where they would just literally be sweating out honey through their pores and spraying out honey from their beehole. At that point, the body completely shuts down and the volunteer sweetly surrenders to the great hive in the sky. The body would be mummified and placed in a stone coffin filled with, you guessed it, honey. The body was laid to ferment for 100 years like a top-of-the-line whiskey. After a casual century of fermenting in bee barf, the coffin would be opened and the corpse would be broken into pieces, which would be distributed as an expensive but effective medical remedy for anything from deep cuts to broken limbs. The only problem here is the lengthy process, which made the medicine very expensive, so it could end up costing you an arm and a leg. James Jameson, an heir to the Jameson whiskey fortune, was on an expedition across Central Africa in 1888 when he came across an interesting proposition. According to Jameson's translator, Asad Farhan, Jameson had heard stories of local tribes' practices of cannibalism. He was in contact with a local slave trader, Tipu Tip, who discussed Jameson's curiosities with the local village chiefs. After some back and forth, Tipu brought forward a 10-year-old slave girl. Tipu requested Jameson give him a bit of cloth to see if the horrifying stories were true. Jameson's desire to see the act firsthand overruled all sense of morality. Half thinking this might be a cruel joke, he handed over 6 cloth handkerchiefs. One of the chiefs motioned over more men who immediately tied up the girl and began ripping her apart and devouring her. Jameson, morbidly fascinated, did not let the opportunity go to waste, and began sketching out the scene in his notebook. Nothing was left of the girl, who reportedly never made a sound during her consumption. After the incident, Jameson knew he royally fudged up since he now had a witness. Assad was all and reported the event to the public, which Jameson quickly denied to save his and his family's reputation. It's unclear if the events 100% took place the way I just explained, but since everyone involved has been dead for over 130 years, especially the girl, it remains unclear how it all happened. But the guy had sketches, so like, come on dude, you did it. Things were all out of whack in Italy around the 9th century. Kingdoms were falling, emperors were rising, pizza hadn't been invented yet, the whole place was a political shit show, and religion surely didn't help in calming things down. The Vatican saw the appointment of 24 popes around a 100-year period, with a decade having a new pope every year. Then this guy shows up, Formosus, a bishop under the current pope, Pope John VIII. But Pope John does not like Formosus. So much so that he accused him of trying to steal his popehood and acting against the rather unfortunately named King of Italy, Charles the Bald, who wasn't even bald. For his alleged crimes, Formosus was excommunicated from the Vatican in 876. 6 years later, everything was a-okay since Pope John VIII left the Vatican on account of him dying. Formosus resumed being a bishop for a while until he was voted to become the next pope in 891. After 5 grueling and politically exhausting years as pope, where he may or may not have convinced a Bavarian king to invade Italy for the crown, Formosus himself went to the great cloud city above. He was succeeded by Pope Boniface VI, which is an appropriate name because he would become a skeleton only 15 days after becoming pope. The next pope, Stephen VI, who thankfully had a normal name, decided to get a bit of revenge on Formosus. Stephen wasn't too happy with the whole Bavarian king invading Italy to become emperor thing, so he held a trial, and Formosus was the defendant. But wait, I thought he was dead. How could he? No, you're right. Pope Stephen had Formosus' corpse dug up, dressed up, and propped up in court. After yet again being accused of attempting to illegally seize popehood from John VIII, amongst other crimes, Formosus was quick to defend himself, stating, to which Pope Stephen said, "Objection!" After the ridiculous court case, Pope Formosus was found guilty. He had 3 of his fingers ripped off, stripped of his honors, and had his remains dumped into the Tiber River, where they were later recovered and laid to rest. The Italian people weren't happy with this move, so during a public uprising, Pope Stephen was arrested and strangled in prison. Béla Kiss was an Austro-Hungarian man born in 1877. A simple man who had an affinity for astrology and the occult, he married twice and had 2 kids. Nothing too out of the ordinary except for the whole occult thing, but hey, some men love mowing a good lawn, some men love studying vampirism. Kiss hired on a housekeeper to tend to the house after his wife left him for some 6'14" stud muffin Giga Chad. The housekeeper noticed that women would often visit the home as customers for Kish's side hustle as a spooky fortune teller. He also began collecting quite a few metal drums on the property. When asked about it, he said he was just stocking up fuel as rations for the upcoming war, to which his neighbors responded, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," and went about their business. In 1914, Kiss was conscripted into the Austro-Hungarian army to fight in World War I. After believing to have been killed in action, Kish's landlord began clearing his property and stumbled upon the fuel drums. The landlord opened up one of the barrels to discover a rotting corpse bound in a sack. "This isn't fuel," said the landlord, and he called the cops. Overall, 24 bodies were recovered from the property. Remember that wife and her Sigma mindset lover? Yeah, strangled and stuffed into barrels. His victims also had puncture marks on their necks and were drained of blood, giving him the title of Vampire of Cincotta, the town where he lived. A frantic manhunt for Kiss began, just in case he survived the war, which he did. Kiss was reportedly in a Serbian hospital recovering from war injuries. By the time police caught on to his scent, he escaped, performing a classic body swap with the dead soldier. He was reported to have been seen over the following years a few times, but he was never caught. And so, another video comes to an end. Were you spooked? Did you brown your britches? Want to learn some more history? Then click here and have a happy Halloween or, whatever time of the year it is.